you this morning to another sermon from the Gardner Lake Church of Christ. Today I want to talk with you for a few moments about the importance of holiness. In fact, in Hebrews chapter 12 and in verse 14 it says to pursue holiness, without which no one will see the Lord. What is holiness? Well, we talk about holiness as a separation to God, and also the conduct befitting those who are separated. After we are sanctified by God, it is our work to continue to be holy. Of all the activities in which holiness should be expected, it should be expected in our worship service, yet worship is not always holy. We see when the tabernacle first began, a very familiar story from Exodus chapter 10, verses 3 and then down in verse 10. Apparently this is the first day concerning the tabernacle, and two priests offered sacrifice of strange fire, which the Lord had not commanded them. It says in verse 3 of chapter 10, and then Moses said to Aaron, "It is what the Lord spoke, saying, by those who come near me, I will be treated as holy, and before all the people I will be honored." In verse 10 it says, "You are to distinguish between the holy and the common," the idea is the profane, "and between the clean and the unclean." When we come before God and worship, there must not be anything that is common, or another word for that, profane. Everything must be holy. We see three verses in the Old Testament. 1 Chronicles chapter 16, verse 29. Psalm chapter 29, verse 2. Psalm chapter 96, verse 9. It says, "O worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness." The beauty of holiness does not involve aesthetics. We see many times concerning the building that people worship in, and they think that, well, that creates a sense of holiness, that this is the meaning of the beauty of holiness. Or maybe someone having a beautiful Bible up in the front that maybe cost hundreds or thousands of dollars, and they read from that one Bible up in the front, and they think, well, that is the beauty of holiness. Or maybe somebody has a huge building with a wonderful choir and a large organ and everything else, and that is the beauty of holiness, they believe. You know, which of these altars would please God? You would think, as you would look at this, well, certainly the one on my left, your right, as you're watching this, that would be the one that would be pleasing to God. But that's not the case. He says, if you make an altar of stone, you shall not build it of hewn stone. For if you use your tool on it, you have profaned it. To make it unholy. To worship in the beauty of holiness cannot include anything of human invention. It must be done. It must be done concerning that it's divine in origin. In the Jewish age, God accommodated the immaturity of his people. The temple appealed to physical and to the aesthetic. There was the sight of gold. There was the smell of incense. There was the sound of instruments. There was the touch that the priest made of sacrifices. He would put their hands on its head. Or the taste of peace offerings. And all of this was very physical, involving their senses at that time. Jesus predicted a change, though. He said, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship the things you do not know. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour is coming, and now is, when true worshipers will worship God in spirit and in truth. For the Father is seeking such to worship him. God is a spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. Hebrews compares the two. In Hebrews chapter 8 and in verse 2 it says, we have a high priest who is seated at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in heavens, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle which the Lord erected and not man. For Christ, this is Hebrews chapter 9 verse 24, for Christ has not entered the holy places made with hands, which are copies of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. What do we have today? Well, in the new covenant involves none of this. It involves, instead of the sight of gold, we walk by faith and not by sight. Concerning smell, the incense is the prayers of the saints. Revelation chapter 5, verse 8. The sound of instruments were in the Old Testament, but now it's making melody in your heart. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 19. It was the touch of the sacrifice of the priest. Now it's being baptized into his death. Romans 6, verse 3. And concerning the taste of the peace offerings, the Lord's Supper is the only material element that we have at this time. Today we can worship in the beauty of holiness only as we do what is authorized by the Lord. Otherwise, it is in the beauty of humanity. You are those who justify yourselves before men, but God knows your hearts. In Luke chapter 16, verse 15, for what is highly esteemed among men is an abomination in the sight of God. In the New American Standard Version, it says to ascribe the Lord glory due to his name. Bring an offering and come before him and worship the Lord in holy array. This is the New American Standard Version. The Old King James says the beauty of holiness. This emphasizes the character of the worshiper. In the Old Testament, it might refer to the clothing of priest in holy array. But when we're dealing with holy array, in James chapter 2 and in verse 1 through 4, my brethren, do not hold the faith of the Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory, with partiality. For if there should come into your assembly a man with gold rings and fine apparel, and there should also come a poor man in filthy clothes, and you pay attention to the one who's wearing the fine clothes, and say to him, you sit here in the good place, and to the poor man you say, you stand here, or sit here at my footstool. Have you not shown partiality among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts? In the New Testament, the fine linen is the righteous acts of the saints. In 1 Timothy chapter 2 and in verse 8 it says, I desire therefore that men pray everywhere, lifting up holy hands without wrath and doubting. In 1 Timothy chapter 2 verse 9 and 10, and in like manner also women adorn themselves in modest apparel, with propriety and moderation, not with braided hair or gold or pearls or costly clothing, but which is proper for women professing godliness with good works. Or Luke chapter 6, verse 46, or why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not the things which I say? Well, I appreciate you tuning in today again to another sermon from the Gardner Lane Church of Christ. Until next week, we bid you a very pleasant good day.